Welcome to Talking Live out of Starshop Studios right here in Times Square. Tonight we are interviewing a very special author who is also a friend of mine, Wendy Sachs. She has a new book coming out. It's already out. It's amazing. It's called Fearless and Free: How Smart Women Pivot and Relaunch, which is good for every woman to have. And it's a little bit in sync with my book, which is Your Best Age Is Now. We talk about midlife women. But Wendy is very impressive. She has such a long resume. It's hard to remember everything she's done. So she's an author. She was editor-in-chief of Care.com, and that's how we met each other. We worked together there. She's an Emmy Award-winning TV producer. She was a publicist and still acts as a publicist on her own behalf, and was a press secretary out of Capitol Hill. So you must have a lot of thoughts about what's going on politically, or no thoughts?
There's a lot happening.
Oh my goodness!
It must be a very interesting time to be on the Hill, but maybe not if you're a Democrat.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, this is an amazing book. So I bought it, and I was able to read it over the weekend. And of course, we found each other because I read this fabulously written article, and it was Wendy's. And I said, oh my God, I have to reach out to you. And we need to discuss women and work and getting fired and how women are perceived versus men. Because we both, have been fired. I mean, you get to a certain point, and it happens. It's unavoidable, I think. Yeah. And also, there are a lot of women who decide to switch careers, or they don't really know what they want to do until they get to a certain point in life where they can listen to their soul, and almost step into themselves. So, what got you to write this book?
You know, I like to say that writers, we write about what we know. And in my case, I write about what I need to know. And, I really feel like, what I've been saying is I've pivoted so much in pirouetting. I mean, I've had, and you just sort of set it up. I'm a dancer. And these days, you need to be. The digital world has disrupted the workforce. And particularly the industries that I've been in, media and publishing. But it touches everything. It's touching retail, it's touching finance, it's touching really every industry out there. And we're finding ourselves needing to be able to pivot, needing to iterate, needing to lean into skill sets that we have but learn new ones, needing to stay relevant. So for me, the book was very much a personal journey. I got laid off from a job, and I was really sort of panicked. I was over 40 and thinking that I actually had what I thought was going to be a really great job. Sadly, it didn't last for very long. I was working at an advertising agency, which is a little bit random because I'm not from the advertising world, but they were creating this content studio. Back in 2014, when content, we keep hearing about content is king, and everyone's trying to create these new mechanisms for creating content and monetizing content. And I thought, this is where I need to be. This is the future.
You never hear about that anymore as you're saying it, and now it's really all about branding.
It's branding. Well, everything just keeps evolving as we're trying to tap into social media. What we're doing right now, Facebook Live. This is a relatively new product coming from Facebook. Everyone's trying to keep up. And when you're over a certain age, which at this point is like over 30, you can feel like you're getting old. I mean, the ageism is happening younger and younger now in these particular industries. And again, I was just really hustling to stay relevant. And so when I lost this job at the ad agency, I started looking all around New York City. I was interviewing everywhere, what I would describe as like the bright, shiny startups, where I thought, this is where I need to be. This is where things are happening. Everyone who interviewed me in that year particularly, I realized everyone had graduated from college in 2009. And I would do the math, and I realized everyone was 27 or 28 years old who was interviewing me. They were the hiring managers. And I was over 40. And I really, I had one particularly depressing interview at a company that really I was a very good fit for them. And they were trying to make sense of my narrative, of my background, because I had done all of these different things. Capitol Hill press secretary. Diverse, and what I think was, pretty interesting. I was a TV producer, done all of these things.
I always found you interesting.
Thank you. But when I left that interview, I realized I wasn't selling myself well. I couldn't fit myself into the box that they were looking for. I needed to rebrand. I needed to figure out what my elevator pitch was. And that really started me on the journey of, how am I going to do it? How do women do it? How do we do things differently?
Were you getting negative feedback? Did you interview for a job and would somebody say, I'm sorry, you don't have the skill set we're looking for? What was the sense that you
Well, there's
got?
a few different things that you hear a lot. And there's a lot of talk about culture. Like maybe it's not the right cultural fit. And that's sort of a euphemism for you're too old. But I think other than that, people, the language has changed as far as what the jobs are. So I never called myself a marketer before.
Yeah.
I had worked in PR, I had worked in media. But now the language is, digital strategist, a brand strategist, or brand marketer. So basically it's the same skill set, but different language. So I was trying to then match the language to them what they were looking for. So this is why I turned to Silicon Valley. I mean, I turned to Silicon Valley not because I'm creating a startup or I'm a technologist, but because they're really our cultural crush today. They're our North Star. And so all of these successful lessons coming out of Silicon Valley, I wondered if women could actually adopt some of these strategies. This whole concept of engineering serendipity.
I love that. Can you tell everybody what that is? Because this is really kind of like a God winks moment.
That's right.
But you talk about engineering serendipity, which is really where you're creating your own luck.
Yeah.
So did you do that for yourself? I know you have
Absolutely.
one story in the book. And
Absolutely.
I was so happy to see the picture with Gloria Steinem, who I love. Is
Thank
she
you.
not a rock star?
I
talk about her in my book because I met her at my college, which was an all-women's college, and she was giving a talk. And she was the rock star in the room. First of all, she looks like a supermodel.
I mean,
okay,
she's
a
just beautiful, and she's 80 years old.
Right, exactly. Yes. But and I was saying, it's not age so much as essence.
Right.
Her essence really leads. And so you write in your book, how you really wanted to meet with her. And there's a picture on social media if you want to go check it out under Wendy Sachs with Gloria Steinem.
And she's holding up the book.
I love that.
It's fantastic. So this concept of engineering serendipity, I think a lot of us think that some people are just lucky. Yeah. I certainly would think some people, and I describe one person, the one man in my book, who I feel like is always very fortunate. Then you realize, though, that serendipity is actually quite strategic, and that you can lay the groundwork for creating opportunities for yourself. And this is really what I go on to describe. And it's partly your own. You've done your homework. You've now put yourself into a situation where you're going to have an opportunity to interact with someone. You're going to know enough about them and about maybe what they're looking for and what you have to offer so you can share it with them, and then you seize on the opportunity. So it's very thoughtful and intentional rather than accidental.
Is it similar to networking, or is it different than networking? Because it sounds very similar.
It's similar in that networking is definitely required to make serendipity happen. I mean, even like what we're doing here right now, I would say it's sort of serendipitous.
Yes.
I wrote an article. I spent a lot of time writing an article. I put it up on LinkedIn because I wanted the visibility, right? You're doing things for visibility. I'm trying to sell a book right now and let the world know that I have a book. So I intentionally wrote an article, intentionally put it on LinkedIn, hoping the world would see it. You happen to have seen it on LinkedIn.
Maybe not the world, but I saw it.
But Dr. Robi saw it on LinkedIn.
And
you reached out to me right away, and that's why I'm here today.
Yes.
So that is, serendipity. Someone else may be thinking, oh, Wendy just keeps landing press for her book, not understanding all of this sort of things that happen.
I reached out to you because it was heartfelt, and that's the way I operate.
Right.
But I also knew, and you got back to me right away, which was great. But I also knew that you are a reliable person. And I knew that if we made a commitment to meet, that you would show up and be amazing. And so that's the other piece, where I think your reputation and your character also leads in some ways.
Without a doubt.
When you're meeting anyone. So that's why I think it's so important not to burn any bridge.
Oh my gosh,
you're right. And it's nice to know that when you get fired, sometimes that's not necessarily burning a bridge. It sometimes can light some fire under you.
I have an listen, I have an entire chapter on the book about getting fired because I've been fired a couple of times, laid off, fired, you're losing your job.
Yeah.
And so many of us can relate to that. And I think there's so much shame still attached to being fired.
Sure.
Because it's personal. I mean, sometimes it's really not. I've worked for startups that have lost their funding and the company folds and everyone's out of a job.
Right.
And then other times it's just your job that, that gets 86.
You're sorry.
In my last job, I was told I was too expensive and they could hire 3 people for my salary.
And what do you say to that? I mean, sometimes you just have to segue out and have faith that there's something else out there. But I do think what you're talking about too is almost being very creative when you're thinking about your next step. So looking to technology, I think was very creative as a way of learning a new language. And I talk about in my book the importance of having younger role models in addition to older role models, because we need their energy and their input and their outlook. And we need to know that we're relevant. It's not, when you've been in the business for a long time, you have to think, why would someone want me? Would I want me? And,
it's a great question.
Would I want me? And if the answer is, well, I'm not so sure, then, we all have a responsibility to bring our A game, but also have a plan B.
And to keep learning.
Yeah.
I mean, I write about something that I think is very interesting, which is that mindset, that growth mindset versus the fixed mindset.
Right.
And that concept that we can keep growing, we can keep learning. I mean, this is a very popular theory now in parenting about teaching,
hope so.
Right? I mean, obviously, we don't want our 12-year-old daughter in 7th grade to think I'm bad at math, right? Like, so it goes into you study and you work hard and you learn. Everyone could become good at math. Some people are maybe naturally good at math. You apply that as an adult to your own skill sets and think, well, maybe I'm not so social media savvy, but it looks like everyone's looking for that skill set as a part of a marketing job today. You can become social media savvy.
And it is kind of fun.
It's fun, and everything's out there for you to learn. Look, the internet has democratized learning.
That's right.
It's really made it very, very easy. Whether you just do it at home because you're reading articles and you're looking at YouTube videos, or you're taking online classes. I mean, there's just so much access right now.
You can almost be inundated. And I think it's really important I wonder if you can speak to this, for people to plug in because, maybe somebody was a teacher at one point, they took some time off to have kids because that's where they wanted to invest their time. And now that their kids are older, I know I have people reach out to me and they say, I want to do TV, how do I get into it? And I always write them back because I applaud their effort of asking questions. But what's your recommendation for somebody who's pivoting and let's say wants something a little bit different? They want a different profession, a different field. Yeah, no, I think that's a great question and so relevant to so many women out there. I have an entire chapter called Getting Back In because it literally speaks to the population of women. Yeah, you've taken yourself out of the workforce for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and now you're thinking, who is going to hire me? The world has really changed. My recommendation is to really, start networking, obviously. Try to get a sense of what it is that you can do. What are your skill sets? What's applicable today to what you did maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago or however long it's been. Start looking at LinkedIn. Start looking at what the job descriptions are. I think that's amazing. It's almost like dating online. Oh my God, it really is. And I don't know if you feel this way, but in our business where you don't necessarily see someone every day or they're not in the same job, it's nice to know you can look on LinkedIn. And you were mentioning earlier kind of instead of the 2 degrees of separation, the 6 degrees of separation, and I think this is a really important point. Well, it's like the weak ties. I read about the power of weak ties are even stronger than your best friend. And there's all of this theory around the power of weak ties. I'm not making up this theory. It makes complete sense to me. It makes a lot of sense, but it's actually a sound theory that was developed in the early 70s and is often referenced in Silicon Valley and in the social networking space because it just makes
makes so much sense. And that is that the people who are a little bit more distant to you can actually be more transformative when it comes to your career and connecting you to the right people. Because the people in your close-knit groups, you all know each other. But once you start pushing out a little bit more, the boundary just keeps growing and growing. And people are also actually quite likely to help you.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think women, we don't like to ask for help. We're a little bit squeamish about saying.
I like to ask for help.
I got
really good at it early on.
A lot of people don't like doing it. Let me tell you, writing a book is the first time you'll get comfortable with asking for help, because it all starts with getting help.
Right. Yeah.
But I think when you really start networking and you're trying to figure out what am I going to do next, you start pushing out into these networks of people. And I actually just wrote an article saying the number one thing to not do when you're looking for a job is to ask someone to pick their brain and meet for coffee, because people do have no time to meet for coffee or to have their brains picked.
Right.
But if you can be more specific.
Even feel like there's nothing there. Like, you like work long enough, you're not sleeping, you're like, what's in my brain? Nothing.
Not much going on there. But if you can narrow it down, be a little bit specific. Even I say you got to fake it a little bit. If you're not even sure, and maybe when you're talking to one friend, it's, hey, I'm looking for a job in brand marketing, and maybe to someone else it's, I'm actually thinking about more of a communications job, or maybe it's even you're thinking about going into real estate. Whatever it may be, you can be noodling with a lot of different ideas, because a lot of us aren't really sure what the next step is.
And that's what therapy is for. I have a lot of but honestly, I have a lot of, like, you can come into a therapist and say, I have no idea, I like this, I like that, I like that, I like this. That's great. That's great for a therapist's office, because then you can figure it out close, and then you go out to the people that you need to network and say, this is what I'm thinking about.
And then you look a little more focused.
Yeah.
I think what happens is you can lose opportunities talking to people as you're networking, saying, I'm just not sure.
Nobody
I'm just not sure.
Nobody has patience to listen. So I think that's really important too to keep in mind. You have that moment in time.
Take advantage of it.
Yeah.
You've got that opportunity. Don't waste it.
Yeah.
Be prepared when someone says, great, what are you looking for? Have an idea.
You talk about in the book how at the beginning of your career you would say, I'm sorry a lot.
Yes.
And how you needed to learn to be a little bit stronger, right? Or tougher. And then would you get the opposite feedback?
Well, right. So I think that there's a lot going on with women's tendency to apologize. And a few things have happened to me in my career that really made me rethink how I present and how I express myself. I was actually told for many, many years that I was actually very abrasive. And in one particularly jarring performance review, I, was told I should just keep my head down. And while, my boss liked me.
What does that mean?
They just thought I was, they thought I just came on too strong. And interestingly, there's a lot of studies that show that women, in performance reviews are judged by using words like abrasive, which is basically like, you're a bitch.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be thought of as a bitch.
No.
We all want to be liked. So I took it very personally, because most of us would take that criticism personally. I moved on to another position somewhere else, and I noticed that a colleague of mine would always say sorry, would always just drop it into conversation, as many people do. It was sort of like a social lubricant. It was just a little bit to hedge. It was a little softer. And I started adopting that. And it worked like a charm. No one thought I was too abrasive or too direct, because I just wasn't. I was hedging. I was dialing it back a little bit. It was not coming off too strong. And then interestingly, a Pantene commercial came out that was spoofing this whole sorry that so many women have taken on. It really sort of almost came from England. It was sort of a verbal trend, a verbal tick used among the Brits that we adopted, and I realized just how it diminished our power. And I didn't mean to apologize. I was just saying it as a way so people didn't think I was so headstrong.
So did you say, did you assess yourself and say, I realize I'm a very strong person, and that could work for some situations, not others?
Absolutely.
And maybe I should find another way?
Absolutely. Okay. I really took it very, it was a moment of self-actualization, where you realize that First of all, women are judged differently. So women in leadership positions, it's the double bind that Hillary Clinton faced. So we all saw in the election, Bernie Sanders, it wasn't just a Donald Trump or the Republicans. Bernie Sanders can be pounding the podium and he's all ruffled and crazed and finger thrusting.
And he was adorable.
And he was adorable. No one told him to comb his hair or to stop with the finger.
Right.
But Hillary Clinton is too shrill. She's too abrasive. She's not genuine. She's not warm enough. She needed to smile more.
It was the first time I ever saw an article that said, maybe you don't vote for who you like, but you vote for who you believe in has your back politically. And I was like, wow.
Right.
That was the first time I'd ever seen an article like that.
I mean,
it's
so
true.
we saw play out.
Yeah, and from a psychological perspective, if you ask a lot of people, they'll say, oh, well, I always favor a male boss over a female boss. And I looked into the psychology of that, and women relate on a very intimate level. We're talking about our kids, we're talking about, how we felt on the scale, when we went shopping, and then to switch back to be tough in business, it feels more personal, where men don't get involved in those conversations. So it never gets to that point.
Right.
And I wonder if that's part of the reason why men can get away with a certain kind of attitude. But it's true. We don't attribute bitchiness to men.
We just don't. We don't. And we're just more forgiving of it.
Yeah.
And so culturally, we need to change the way we listen to women, because it's not just, and you're pointing it out, it's not just women who don't, or not just men who don't like that strong woman in power in calling her shrill. Women, there was 40% of women voted for Donald Trump. They found that she was too aggressive and not warm enough and not authentic and not genuine. So that's the essential double bind. And I think it is very interesting and very important for women to understand how they're presenting to the world. And I write a chapter about confidence, because before you can pivot, you need to feel good about yourself. You need to stand tall. You need to be big. You need to take action. And how do you start doing that? How do you get over the fear? How do you get over the fear of failure? How do you get over the fear of taking a risk?
By doing it a lot, I find that works for me.
That's exactly right.
But you talk about in your book, and I love this, the shine factor.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
It's very the shine theory.
The
shine theory. And this is about creating that squad of women who surround you, and finding, instead of being intimidated by the smart, beautiful, kick-ass woman in the room at the cocktail party who you see, befriend her, go up to her. Instead of thinking like, oh, I can't get into her space, or I'm feeling competitive with her, be her friend. And this comes from, I did not coin this theory, this comes from this writer named Anne Friedman and her friend Amina Sow. And it's this beautiful philosophy about just get yourself with the smartest, most awesome women in the room, and you get a little bit of their halo when you're friends with them. And then you obviously create a genuine friendship, but surround yourself by the smartest women. There's power in that.
I agree.
And to embrace that.
My female friendships are so important, and I think I learned that going to an all-women's college, how we really did support each other, because we were kind of an island to ourselves. So we needed to have each other's back, and that was tremendously helpful. Do you feel that successful women are more supportive than women maybe who are struggling? Because I have found that it's really the successful women who are confident in their accomplishments that are very generous.
I think that's a great point. I think there's a few different things. I think that as more women are rising to the top, there's more ability to raise us together. And so there is more overall support than what I had felt coming up in the ranks, where there just weren't a lot of women to help lift you together. I think the millennials are experiencing something different. There's more of a sisterhood now. There's more of a let's raise each other together feeling, which is incredible.
That is incredible.
And to the point of, are you getting support? I think when you're feeling good inside, you're more likely to help others.
I think so too.
And you're not feeling threatened by what anyone else is doing.
There's room for everyone. There really is room for everyone. I think we have a question here for you right before we close. And just while I'm looking, where can people find you and your book? I mean, I know I was very quick to get in on Amazon, and you're right, Prime is very fast.
Amazon Prime, it can be there tomorrow. The book is everywhere. It should be in all of your local bookstores. It's also on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. It's really it's widely accessible.
We have one question here from one of our Facebook people asking, when should you consider going back to school? Which I think is a great question.
It is a great question. I mean, I think I would need to know a little bit more. You know, do you really need to go back to school? I think, you know, what is it that you're looking for? Do you actually need another degree? Is it something that you can learn online or in an internship or on the job? But perhaps you do. I mean, are you trying to be a coder? You know, there are classes for that. You don't necessarily need to go to a community college and take a full year class.
Right.
There are ways to sort of hack that a little bit. But I think, you know, if you're really looking into completely doing a pivot and it requires another degree, and certainly go back to school and go for it.
Well, I think this is amazing, and I think this is really an essential read for any woman, for young women too, just to plan and plot out, and just for any woman who is interested in making that next step in her career, wants to make it to the next level, or is thinking of just totally pivoting or dancing or pirouetting like you do. This is the book. It's fantastic, and it's so well written.
Thank you.
You're a beautiful writer.
Thank you.
Fearless and Free, How Smart Women Pivot and Relaunch Their Careers. It's a real great read, fast, wonderful, and hopefully it'll help everyone out there get to the next level that they want to be. Thank you, Wendy. Best of luck with this wonderful book.
Thank you so much.